friendly neighborhood PhD, and you're listening to the TyePod. Well, hey everybody, it's another episode of the TyePod, and today I'm excited to talk to the hosts of the Othering podcast, Dory and Mike. Looking forward to visiting with you about all things podcast and disability, chronic illness too. I know there's several things that we could really get into, and it's really good to have you on.
Thank you for having us.
Definitely, very good synchronization there, by the way. Yeah, so I'm curious, just kind of an icebreaker type question, and honestly, this might be the hardest one of the whole podcast. But is there a song that you feel like maybe represents your journey with starting the podcast, or maybe journey together? Any kind of sort of theme song that you can think of on that?
I've been listening to your episodes. I kind of expected this question.
Ah,
I've been thinking about it.
yeah,
The one I'm going to say is Billy Joel's My Life. And the more I tell you of my story as we go through, you'll kind of understand why. But that's kind of my whole life, and meeting Dory is a part of it. But
nice.
that's the song I'm going to pick.
Yeah,
Honestly, like I've been racking my brain, and there's so many songs that I feel like represent me. Like I used to be in choruses and stuff, and I would say um pretty much show tunes. Any show tune I think would fit.
yeah, nice.
Because I like being in the spotlight to an extent, to help people and, uh, not necessarily have the light on me exactly, but sharing the spotlight with other people. And
That's a good way to put
I
it.
really can't pick just one.
Yeah, yeah.
There's too many.
I feel that, a lot. And in fact, I've been thinking, well, really, it's a theme song for different parts of my life. So
Yeah.
that's,
Yep,
yeah, that's good. But yeah, I appreciate you doing the homework too beforehand, and that was
of
even,
course.
yeah, that was a question we hadn't even talked about before. So
Hmm.
that's good. Yeah, so I guess I kind of want to start out with your disability, chronic illness experience. If you want to just talk a little bit about, each one, like what some of the highlights are, and kind of what disability or chronic illness you've dealt with, if whatever details you want to include, and then we can kind of dig into specifics after that.
I'll let you go first.
All right. I have CRPS. I acquired it after playing soccer in my parents' front yard.
Mm.
Um, the way my parents' yard is that it's a nice slope, and there's apparently a hole in it. And I was the first and only person to find that hole in their yard. So
Mm.
I ended up twisting my ankle, had a horrible high, it's like a level sprain. I don't remember exactly the terms, and it never healed quite right. And it's just been a constant pain. And it disables me more each year. Now I'm ambulatory. I have to use crutches and a wheelchair to get around. I recently discovered that I am neurodivergent, um, and more specifically, ADHD and autism. And I have to admit, finding that out later in life is frustrating, but yet freeing because you understand better. That's why I did what I did.
Right,
Um,
right.
I can't think of anything else.
Those are the big ones.
Yeah, those are my biggest ones, I would say.
Uh-huh.
For
Okay.
me, I am undiagnosed, but probably neurodivergent, and a lot of mental illnesses. I have
Mm.
severe depression and anxiety, and then kind of smaller things, in my opinion. I have tinnitus. I wouldn't really call it a disability, but it's
Uh-huh.
constant ringing in my ears. Doesn't really affect me any more than just really, really, really annoying.
Mm.
But my big things are the depression and the anxiety.
Right, right. Yeah, that I definitely, I appreciate you sharing that, and being kind of open with that, because it is, difficult to share some of the things, I think, and especially like when they are relatively new, or things that maybe came on later, and it's almost like there was already, well, like in my case, there were some things that were already there, and then when you add something on top of it, later, it's a little hard to process. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah. As far as like the CRPS side of it, I know that is like a high pain type of diagnosis typically, right? So like, how do you sort of manage that kind of on a day-to-day basis now?
Um, it kind of goes in and out. Some days
Okay.
are worse than others. But I have like a baseline 4 or 5 pain.
Mhm.
And then I've gotten used to it now because I've been dealing with it since I want to
Uh-huh.
say 2012.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I kind of got that baseline okay now. On the higher pain days, I just sometimes have to lay on the couch and kind of not do much of anything
Mhm.
because if I try too much, it just flares up worse.
Okay. So are you able to kind of predict when that's coming on, or is it just day to day? You really don't know.
I don't know. It's
Mhm.
unfortunate that I can't predict it because sometimes what I would think would cause a flare up doesn't.
Mhm.
And sometimes I could just stand outside and then all of a sudden I'll have a flare up.
Okay.
And
So it's
sometimes she has a good day and she goes and does way too much, and then
Yes.
right.
week after that.
Right, because you feel like on those good days you have to make up for the days that you can't do as much. Yeah, yeah, I
Yes.
definitely get that. Yeah, and then Mike, I was going to ask you about as far as like the depression and everything. Like, how have you been able to manage or work with that kind of on a day-to-day basis as well?
I'm not sure I manage it very well.
Uh,
I do have a therapist. I see a
okay,
therapist now. It's every 3 weeks, but it was every
okay,
week for a little while. So I have gotten better in that regard. A lot of my depression comes from when I was a child and a lot of bullying
mm,
and just and a lot of family issues too, and just a lot of troubles back then. So
mhm.
my biggest problems today are worrying about what other people think and which is funny that I do a podcast and I care about what other people think.
I feel that.
But as far as I see it, it's a phone call. I don't see that I'm talking to hundreds of people or anything, so it doesn't bother me that much.
Right.
So now it's just trying to get past that mindset of they're probably not thinking about me. They're worried more about themselves and just trying to get
Hmm.
through that way, which is a struggle. And I still fight with it every day.
Right.
She hears about it every day. But
Right.
but that's the big thing with my depression and even my anxiety, like going into work, just
Yeah.
worried about my coworkers more than anything.
And like, do you both do work or have employment outside of the podcast, or what's that kind of look like for you?
I have a 9 to 5 outside of the podcast,
I
Okay.
am staying at home
unfortunately.
now. Unfortunately for you. I used to work. I used to be a professor of information technology,
Okay.
and as my pain progressed, I
Mm,
wasn't able to do as much, and it kind of the medicines that I have to take sometimes cause horrible drowsiness,
mm.
and it kind of doesn't mesh well with trying to teach people when you're asleep on the floor.
It's a good point. Yeah, that usually does not work.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
maybe if you're a student in the back of the class, but not when you're the
yes.
professor. Yeah. Yeah.
So now I'm at home and deal with our kids and pets.
Hmm.
Yeah, I do a purchasing job in a
Okay.
at a fastener company, so I'm sitting at a computer all day.
Well, do you find that the podcast has it become something that's maybe even a little bit therapeutic or something that you just
Yes,
kind of dig into that way? Yeah.
So
it's a huge therapy to me.
Hmm.
And before we started, I would say that with everything going on, um, I was angry and frustrated, and I felt like I'm supposed to do something, and I don't know what. How
Right.
can I help people do what they want to do, or be healthy, or whatever it is? And I kept trying to think, and there was a conversation that Mike and I had where we were also saying, we missed being able to do a radio like show.
Is that something you've done in the past then?
Yes.
Okay.
I used to have an internet radio
Oh,
station with
wow.
a
Okay.
couple of
Nice.
people. It was primarily focused on like paranormal radio shows and stuff, and we had some
Mm.
music.
So you had kind of a background in kind of that
Yeah.
sort of
Yeah.
production area before. Yeah.
And so we were talking about that, and all of a sudden I had like this dawning thought of like, okay,
What?
well, let's do a podcast.
Hmm.
And at first it sucked because we were we didn't have a focus at
Yeah.
first. And then with the current things that were happening, I thought of, well, how can we help the marginalized? How can we help especially LGBTQ plus and disabled? Because we're always the first ones to go in those situations. And so I kept thinking, I'm like, well, why don't we focus on them?
Right.
And
And
that's
and the kind of funny thing was this was right after we had a conversation where I was saying just you doesn't really make a difference. Just you doesn't do anything. Just you saying something doesn't do anything.
Mm.
And I was really wrong on that. So since starting this, I realized that everyone's voice makes a difference.
It
One there's a
does.
big difference. But we were almost having a fight about that. And then
Mm.
she mentioned the podcast and she was already a part of the Instagram community with
Right.
disabled people and LGBTQ and stuff like that. So I said, well, see what your people think, see if they're
Yeah.
interested. And she got a
Well,
great
that's a good thing,
response.
right? When you actually have a following to kind of put
Yeah.
some
yeah,
things out there and get responses. And
yeah. And we got a great response from it. Everybody was just like, "Oh my god, that's brilliant, that's great," and I would love that. And so that's kind of how it was born.
yeah,
And I figured that was we would have a couple months worth and then we'd be done, run out of
then
gas.
it would kind of like flame
I
out
was way
and
wrong.
Yes.
yeah,
We got a
that's.
great response.
Did you as far as reaching out to guests, like how did that look initially? Did you just put like a request out, or did you like handpick some people? Like what was that for you early on?
I handpicked some people at first.
Okay.
I had specifically asked them, if we did this, would you mind being, some our first guests? And they were just like, yes, that would be awesome.
Mhm.
And so at first we handpicked the people, and then
We
you
put a
did.
we put a post out on
Yeah.
Instagram and got a big response from it.
Yes.
Very big
That's
response.
kind of how mine started. I reached out to some and it was really good. And then, the more it goes, then you get quicker responses and more of them, and before you know it, there's no way you can have that many guests on the show. So,
Right. And every so often we find one we really, really want that
oh
hasn't
yeah,
reached us that we'll reach out to them.
yeah.
Whether or not we get them depends on the person, but yeah.
Have you been guests on the other ones a lot as well, or is that something you're just now kind of looking into?
We've been a guest on one other so far.
Okay.
We're looking to be a guest on more.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that definitely fits this discussion then for sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to get your thoughts on intersectionality with chronic illness, disability, and gender and anything like that. Like, what is your thought on that? Like, where it is right now, and how has your podcast? Do you feel like it's working to kind of advance that sort of, I guess, bring awareness to multiple marginalized groups?
Yes, it's very important to me. Being a mixed person of Black, Hispanic, Latino, Latina,
Mm-hmm.
and white and indigenous, it's kind of like been my whole life. So I
Right.
always think in terms of where do I fit in? And I hate I hated growing up feeling like I was out there and just alone, and I don't want other people to feel that way. So I feel like it's very important that we talk about your gender, your whether your sex, whether or not you can have sex, and things like that.
Right.
And it's important to talk about how that interacts with your disability, if you have one,
Right.
and how that doesn't make us any different than everybody else. Just
Right.
because we might have extra things after, say, our name, doesn't mean that we're not as human. And so I think it's very important to describe and talk about that intersectionality because we're all more than just what we look like on the outside.
Absolutely. Right. And I feel like, any one of those things is isolating at times and something that people deal with assumptions and stigma, and so like how do you look at trying to, sort of help others that are dealing with all these different things at the same time, and
Mhm.
it's seemed like it's just stacks on stacks of anxiety and pressure and all those kind of things.
Yeah,
And for me, as a white heterosexual male and a caretaker for
Yeah.
Dory, and then I have three kids, and one of them is part of the LGBTQ community. So for me, it's a lot of learning for sure. In the last 25 years I've been with Dory, it's been a lot of learning and just helping to protect my family and understanding other people what other people need to be worried about and
Yeah.
helping others to protect themselves and their family.
Mm.
and amassing a giant community so that we can all look out for each other and make sure that we're getting through together and not left behind.
Right.
Because it's convenient and easier to just throw certain people under the bus and leave everyone else in front, but you can't be free if everybody is not free.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that's something that even unfortunately many members of the disability community, because of maybe their background or maybe the level of disability they face, like even stigma and everything sort of filters into their content as well, when maybe they don't intend to, or maybe they do, that makes it really challenging for me when I see parts of the community that still have those things going on, and if you're for human rights and just everyone having their own lives and being able to do what they do, like I don't see how you can cut out one group.
Yeah,
Right.
can't really.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
even if all things were exactly the same, let's say there was no such thing as the intersectionality, we were all the same color, nobody had any difference in like disability or anything, we're still all humans.
Right.
And that's what
Right.
it comes down to is how do you look at other people and see them as less than and think that you're better than kind of thing? Like it just doesn't make sense to me because our insides are the same. What makes us so special is that our outsides are different. That's what makes us unique. That's what makes us beautiful, is
That's a
that
good way to
we
put
aren't
it.
the same. And I think that we should be celebrating the fact that we aren't. And that because of the fact that we'll have different shades or different levels of disability or, different alphabet letter, then
Mhm.
we have better perspectives to share.
Right.
And so then we can all see that we're all human.
Right. No, that's the common thread that, links, I think, everybody. And I'm curious if doing the podcast and everything, have you at times, felt like there is any kind of resistance, or have you had to overcome any challenges in that aspect of, bringing intersectionality kind of to the forefront?
Yes. Yes, we have. We had a big thing about this,
Mhm.
because, being a part of it doesn't necessarily mean that you're an expert. I can only talk about my issues of depression and CRPS. I can't speak for other people.
Mhm.
And sometimes that kind of gets in there where you kind of want to speak for other people and you shouldn't. And that's kind of something that we have to, be mindful of. And also going back to the gender aspect, there are some people that are non-binary
Mhm.
that are, they, them. And we made a huge mistake.
Well, yes, we made a very big mistake. We're both in our 40s.
Mhm.
Back in the 90s, pronouns wasn't really that big of a thing. People didn't go by they, them. And so this is not an excuse, but it's hard for me. It has been hard for me adjusting to that. We have a child that likes to go by they, them, and I had a hard time adjusting to that. But in the big mistake, we did misgender someone in their introduction. I
Oh, yeah.
apologize and fixed it right there, but it, it wasn't good. And we learn from it. I think that's what's most important.
Right.
And
Right.
tried to be better, about
Mhm.
that. Because honestly, everybody has a bias. Everybody has their prejudices. If you don't, you're not human. And that's just kind of part of how we evolved to be able to withstand, animals and the climate.
Mhm.
Um, but we make mistakes.
Mhm.
Right.
And
Right. Which, I mean, that is another human thing that we all share, I think,
yes,
and so much of it is how you respond and your willingness to be open and learn and acknowledge, that there are mistakes obviously that happen. So yeah, but it's I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think oftentimes it's kind of hard to really talk about that or even bring that up, and
Yeah.
obviously I have biases too, and I'm kind of learning as I go with a lot of these things too. And so, learning about pronouns, making sure that you're using the right ones that, that each individual person wants. Yeah, I just think that's really important to respect for sure.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Agreed.
it's very important to respect it. And like I felt horrible doing that, but I just I thought about it and I'm like, okay, well, how can we learn from this and be better? And we have tried very hard to fix that and make sure that we don't do that again. And I think that's the big thing that we all have to kind of understand is yeah, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody knows that. It's how you try to fix it later. Because again, we all come in with prejudices and biases that sometimes you don't even know you have.
Right.
Right.
Depending upon when you were born and how you were raised.
And
And
I mean, just like the environment that you grew up in and that you are currently in. I mean, you're right, there's so many variables there.
And having not been born, physically disabled,
Mm, mm,
and not even realizing that I was mentally disabled, it's just kind of like sometimes it's a shock to the system.
right.
And, you know, I hate to admit that, yeah, as a kid and as a teenager, I partook in those stupid things that kids and teenagers sometimes do when they're mocking other people.
Mm.
And I, but I thought back on those and I said, no, I got to be better than that because I wouldn't want to be mocked.
Right, right.
And
And honestly, there's many, many people that need to realize they need to change that area.
yeah,
Not to
Oh,
name
yeah.
names, but
and
uh,
I think the biggest thing is that you have to recognize your problem,
mhm.
own up to it, say, "Look, I fucked up. I'm sorry. I
Nope, you're
screwed."
good.
And then be, willing to constantly show that you're trying to make it better.
Mhm.
It's when you double down, that's when it's
Yeah.
really harmful.
Right,
Because
When you keep doing it.
yeah,
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. You're right. That ownership and admitting to it, and the willingness, I think, to grow and change is the big thing for sure.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious, how do all of these things tie into the name of your podcast and like your mission going forward? Like, how did you decide on othering? And yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
yes.
Mm,
So
that was all her.
it's because growing up as a minority, you're always othered. Everything is about, those other people did this, those other people did that. And when you already kind of stick out like a sore thumb, like I feel like I do, um, you feel othered a lot growing up, and it's not always comfortable. And so when I was thinking of the name for our podcast, I thought about it how in history the first people always to go are disabled and LGBTQ people plus people, and how we're always othered. You're always pushed to the side and made to be othered so that the mainstream are then comfortable with the destruction of those peoples. And othered, just othering came up in that we are always othered.
And I
Yeah,
thought it
that's
sounded really cool.
it did. Yeah, and I was gonna say I haven't I'd never heard that term before, and right away, it gets your attention, which is good.
Mm, yeah, I had not really heard about it either before.
Yeah,
She explained it to me, and I'm like, yeah. And
it's
like, thinking business wise, marketing wise, I thought it's a great title. I think
right.
it'd be perfect.
Yep. And when you're doing a podcast, you're always at least thinking about that a little bit, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Well, that's
it
what
kind of,
was your go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say it just, the thought came in my head immediately because of my history.
Mhm.
And it's not to say that we are othered, it's to say that it's for those that have been othered. And that even though we're considered other, we're still just as wonderful, if not extraordinary people
Right.
that, have brains and hearts too,
Hmm.
and we use them.
Hmm. Definitely. Do you feel when did you first learn that term on your side? Was that something that you'd heard a long time ago or
I'm kind of a history buff. Like I
nice?
love history. And it's something that I've always heard growing up at how when, studying history, at how people would basically be able to say, well, this is how we can treat them because they're not us. And knowing that history and of course my own personal experiences with being treated as you're not one of us. Just I kind of grew up with that term. And so that's kind of where it came from.
Okay, that's really good. I think, obviously it's terms like marginalized or I'm sure there's several others that come to mind, but that one seems like less negative in a sense or something. I don't know. It just seems like it's more
It does.
inclusive in a way.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to be more inclusive because I just felt like marginalized is it always comes with such a connotation that is negative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of be the brightness and the sunshine, I guess you
Mm.
could say,
Mhm.
for all of our people so that they all feel welcomed and loved and, oh, I want to be a part of that group, as opposed to I'm a part of that group kind of feeling.
Yeah, yeah. How do you feel too about like just disabled or disability? I know that at times, that's kind of a hot topic of like there's other labels that are used or that some people, want to use like differently abled things like that. How do you feel about that area?
I personally feel like if you want to use another label that's for you,
Mhm.
for me personally, I don't have a problem with disabled. I'm not differently abled. I am disabled.
Yeah.
Right.
There's just some things I can't do. Like I can't stand for long periods of time. I can't walk far without excruciating pain and my legs giving out on me.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't being called differently abled, I think kind of lessens the severity of what I'm feeling.
It almost makes it sound comical, like a joke.
Yes.
You're right.
To me, it kinda does, and no offense to people who like that term, and,
Yeah.
that's for you,
Yeah.
that's great.
Right.
But for me, it just kind of feels like it
Mhm.
is a comical-ish type of term, and
Hmm.
that you're lessening your severity, your
Yeah.
aspect of it, and it just kinda adds too many words to divide
Yeah.
us even more.
Right. Right. That's a good point. And I feel even at times that there's so much attention, and this is my own, kind of personal opinion, that there's so much attention on like other words or other labels that people might want to start using. And I'm just like, that's not fixing or addressing the issue. It's
Mm-mm.
further complicating it. And so, yeah, like for me, disabled and disability feels, like that's the right term and the one that, I think describes it the best, honestly.
Yeah,
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Go
like you
ahead.
said, just having so many terms, it makes it harder for allies to then be allies because they don't necessarily know what to say, but they can say. And
Hmm.
when you have so many terms, it confuses people too.
And
So
especially, you're right, like people that aren't, as aware or familiar with any of it, if they're coming to it for the first time and trying to learn what the right, labels and terms are, and then to meet that kind of confusion, it just
yeah,
it can't help.
So I have a question for you guys.
Yeah,
What about handicapped? What if someone were to call you handicapped? I think that's a very common one,
I
especially
do
for
too.
handicap parking. So
Hmm.
people see someone, say, in a wheelchair, and they're going to say he's handicapped. He wouldn't necessarily to say disabled. Do you
Hmm.
find handicap being a bad term?
I
Even
mean, for me, I feel more negative towards that one than
I
disabled, to be
I can see
honest.
that too.
Yeah.
Mhm.
kind of
Um,
feel like if you're talking about the placard, yeah,
yes,
handicap placard makes sense. But
that blue
as
parking sign. Yep.
yeah,
Yeah.
but as I become more and more disabled, I feel like handicapped. That's what you talk about when you're playing golf.
I was just gonna say like that does apply to that
Yeah,
area
it
too.
it doesn't I don't feel like it really encompasses the levels of disablement that
Mm,
people go through,
mhm,
because, uh, I mean, based on the research that I've gone through, not everybody is always handicapped at that moment, even
mhm.
though they have visible disabilities or things like that. Sometimes they have good days, sometimes they have bad days. And the way that I've always kind of grew up with the word handicap, it always came off as just the worst of the worst.
Right, I can see that, yeah.
And we're not.
And you're right, like, in some ways, like, in some areas, maybe others are more handicapped than we are on this particular subject or topic too. So, yeah, that's a tricky one. How do you feel about, crippled on that one? Like, do you or crip-based terminology?
I kind of feel like for me with crippled and
Mhm,
crips, I think it should be for those that are more disabled to use.
mhm.
Like, I feel like it's hard to say because it's
And
another one of those
again, it
words that,
is individual based, right? Like, everybody has their
yeah,
own feelings towards
everybody
it.
has their own feelings towards it.
Yeah,
If you want to use it, use it. It's a word.
right.
Let's change the words from always being negative, if we can, to
And
being
that's what I
positive.
was right, and that particular one almost feels like one it was negative originally, and that like
Yeah.
it's trying to be turned back against
Yeah,
that, and so again, you're right. Like I think each of us has our own, feelings on the different terms out there, but
Yeah, I
yeah,
agree. If that's what you want to go by, go ahead. I know,
right.
and we talked to Andrew Gerza, and he goes by the
Same
cripple,
here.
which is
Yep.
fine. But I agree. Growing up in school, I feel like if someone was handicapped or limping, everyone would mock them, saying
Right.
crippled.
And that to me always felt like a
Yeah,
negative, and so
yeah.
I would try to not use that term. But yeah, and it is, in some ways maybe it's good to be used to sort of like redirect it right back on, you
hmm
know,
I think there are some words that we can take back and redirect and make them more positive. Some words I don't think we can.
right.
Um,
You're right.
and we have to kind of be open to which words those are. Because,
Hmm.
and we have to be open as to those that push back and say, no, we
Hmm.
can't use that
Hmm.
word. Um,
And it's probably good to have perspectives of both sides, right? Like that
mhm.
support one term versus the other, and learning why and what's behind that, and sharing, each other's thoughts on it.
Yeah, in a civil discourse so that we can actually come together in a consensus. Like, I don't think that anybody should ever say the R word because
Agreed.
it's evil. It's
Mhm.
up there with those other evil words, and it can't possibly be turned positive,
agreed.
especially not with how people that were labeled that were treated.
I
Mm.
agree.
And so I don't think that could ever come back.
I don't either. That's definitely one that I've never been really I've
I
never been in
never
favor
liked
of at
it.
all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've never liked it. I hated it. It's foul.
hmm
It
To put
feeds
it.
the stigma, right? Like
Yeah.
so much. Yeah.
Degrading. Yeah,
But
Yeah.
if you call me crippled or crip, whatever, I don't mind it. Like, I
Hmm.
don't feel like it's appropriate for me because of my level of disability, and maybe that kind of gets into the disability hierarchy that has been kind of going around lately. I want to be respectful of that, but at the same time, I don't mind it for me.
Well, and I mean that makes sense that there are some obviously that can be, discussed and maybe is based on interpretation more, but then, there are others that I feel like are
yeah.
way too, I guess they add way too much of the stigma and the
Mhm.
negative and are too easy to just casually, downgrade somebody like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I agree. I kind of want to circle back to the podcast like format, and if you've had multiple disabilities on your show, and obviously sometimes accessibility looks different based on what you're going through, are there examples where you've had to sort of learn a new way to make it more accessible, or work with a guest that, maybe has something different that you haven't talked to before?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So far, it's been pretty good. And we'll, when we hit that road, we would love to work with the
True.
person to figure out how we can make it
Except,
accessible to them.
Hmm. Hmm.
And like one of the things that we do is that we have camera, but we don't necessarily record the camera.
yeah. So
Mainly because we want
video call,
people,
but only audio recorded.
right? We
Right.
want people to come as they are.
Right.
And like, I feel like I should have done my hair today, but I didn't.
Honestly, like I've gone back and forth with how much, video I want to show and do I want to have a background. And like obviously with some of my medical needs, like the quickest thing for me is to just throw on this cape that I'm wearing right now, and it covers and it's
Yeah.
but yeah, I kind of like showing, I guess, the visual side when people want that, or if they're okay with that, and definitely it's something I am open, obviously, if they want one way or the other, that's totally fine too. So I think that is definitely making it accessible, on that side of it. And I have had someone basically that was transcribing or reading questions from someone who couldn't talk. Actually, it was Sean Golden. I was on his show and he was on mine. So that was something I had to, definitely learn how to do and make sure that was accommodated. But I like the approach of, sort of working with the guest and, the different needs as they come is kind of the way to go. So yeah,
Have you had any guests that did not speak English well to a point where you did not feel like it could work because the English was so
I
poor? How
haven't
did you
yet.
handle that?
I haven't yet, but I do think about that if that does happen, and I think probably I'm wondering if like a transcript would be
Yeah.
good to definitely include. And maybe I don't know how you handle like pre-prep before, every episode, but sometimes I find that, maybe it makes sense to have a meeting before to plan things out or a little more even email correspondence, whatever the guest is kind of needing. But in that case, I almost, would want to have a preset meeting. And
Yeah, we
actually that's a
had
good point too to make me think about like the homework beforehand, right? Like if yeah, like you need to at least know a little bit about the guest before you have them on, obviously. So have you had one that didn't speak English as well? And like how did you handle that?
we had one, they were from France.
France.
Yeah, they were from
Okay.
France. And they were very nice, but yeah, I think there was a big language barrier. I feel like they didn't always understand the question,
Mm,
and it was hard to understand their answers. We ended up not airing it, and not because of the interview. It was a great conversation,
yeah,
wonderful conversation, but we were worried that for our listeners, it wouldn't go over well, wouldn't be able to be understood. And we just didn't feel like it would work.
yeah.
So to kind of help make up for that with that guest, we've kind of worked with them on some other things and
Well, I
helping
was gonna ask if you
other
like
stuff.
pivoted your collabs a little bit.
Yeah. And they were okay with it. I
Good.
mean, there was a little pushback at the beginning, but in the end, they understood and they were okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
How did you kind of cope with that? Because it almost hurts in a way, right? Like you go through and do the
it
episode
was
and not to
stressful.
air
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was very stressful. We didn't know what to
And
do
they,
because we didn't want to hurt them.
yeah, the last thing we want to do is ever hurt anybody and make them feel unwelcome or unloved or anything because of talking to us. Like it's very important to me to make sure that everybody feels okay talking to me. Um, and in that situation, I felt horrible because I felt like, oh, I should have learned French. Why didn't I learn
Oh,
French?
like why didn't I take that language class
Yeah,
before?
and because like I took Spanish and I'm like, oh,
Ah,
yeah, I'd taken French.
right.
It just at the same time though, sometimes you just can't accommodate everybody
Hmm.
the way you want to when it's online.
Right, right.
It's
And when you're kind
hard.
of doing it's slightly informal the way our styles are with the podcast too, so like there's not necessarily very structured, detailed, planning, like not like you have a staff to,
Right.
to plan and prep for that, so and again, like it's not your primary job either. It's extra on top of that. And so, sometimes time and all those things play a factor. And yeah, and it's sometimes you don't know what it's going to be like until you're in it.
Yeah,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
exactly.
since that episode, I like to go. I mean, we always did our research.
Yeah.
I like to try to find a video or something on their Instagram where they're talking, so I can make sure that everything is okay and that we won't have that communication barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not to say we don't accept people from other
Sure.
countries.
Right.
We
Right.
talk to people from UK and Canada and everything, happily would, but we want to make sure our listeners can understand it.
Yeah. And shout out to UK and Canada. I've had a lot of guests from there
Yeah,
too. So,
And because the reason why we are so hell bent on making sure our listeners can understand is because the whole premise is your story.
right.
We want your story out there, whatever you feel like you're okay with sharing, so that we can show the human side, the fact that we have other jobs, other dreams, and give a little bit of knowledge of these are diseases that are out there, and some of them are from birth, some of them aren't, and
right.
understanding those things comes with being able to share that and making sure that everybody can hear it and understand it.
Mhm.
And so then they can then think back and say, maybe I should treat people better, or whatever it is. Or
Mhm.
my friend, I didn't realize that they were struggling so much. Maybe I can be a better friend now.
So I'm
Right.
going to embarrass you, Dory.
Go ahead.
Earlier, she had mentioned that she doesn't like hurting other people. That's not something just for the podcast. That's her. That's her personality has been from the beginning since I've known her. She has always, always been very empathetic towards people, always cared about people beyond just her and her family, and always wants to make sure everyone's treated fairly, and has a very, very good heart and big reason why this podcast is what it is, our podcast. Yeah.
And it's probably at your own expense too, right, Dory, on
Yes,
occasion.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it it hurts.
And I think that's why we fight so much, because I think sometimes I get to that part of her, I kind of pick at it a little more than I should.
Mhm.
And to elaborate though, it's like when we're talking to some people have had horrific, upbringings, or they get kicked out, or for some stupid reason, and it hurts me to think that these people are, struggling with whatever they're struggling with, and then having no backup, no family, and it just sometimes it gets overwhelming, but I feel at the same time a relief
Mhm.
because it feels like I'm finally doing what I was meant to do, which is to, uplift other people's voices.
Right, right. That actually touches on something that I was wanting to ask you about that, because some people may think that us hearing all of these other stories and going and seeing all the other, maybe suffering or pain that people are going through on top of what we're dealing with often with our own disabilities and everything. But how do you look at it, and like do you feel like it's almost extra weight, or in a way is it something different maybe?
I used to think it was extra weight, and
Hmm.
since I've been seeing my therapist, I have found a way to kind of not take it all on because I would try to. Like I had to fix every single person's problems, and that's just not even possible. And it was one of those things where you know it, but you can't take yourself out of that thought process. And when I started talking to my therapist about it, I realized in order to help my family and all of these new people that I'm meeting, I'm no good if I'm just burnt out.
Mhm.
Good point.
So I like to watch. There's a character called the Tiny Chef, and
Mm-hmm.
I love him to pieces. And every day I will watch a video of his, and it makes me smile, and it makes me realize that they're still good. And I will sometimes watch a cartoon, from my kid's childhood or my childhood,
Hmm.
and it kind of calms me back down and makes me realize that yes, one person can do so much, but there's still limitations,
Right.
and that I don't have to try and fix every single limitation.
I'm a
And
little different. I mean,
mhm.
I have empathy. I feel bad, whatever. But during our podcast recordings, I'm going to say I'm a lot more focused on like the production part of it, the electronics. So sometimes I mean, I understand the conversation. I'm there for the conversation, but sometimes it doesn't always click. And then I'm going back through editing it, and I'm like, wow. And it just really hits me, and it's just really almost depressing sometimes. We just talked to someone that had a just awful story about what they went through, and
Mhm.
I mean, I don't take it like to heart. I don't let it really affect me long,
Mhm.
but there are times where it just really kind of hits me while I'm listening, just like almost want to cry type of thing, because it's so awful what people have done to them or have not done when they should
Mhm.
have.
Mhm. You're right, and that is interesting. You mentioned during the editing phase, because there are times where you're going back through it, and I'll hear something that a guest said, and I'm just like, wow, that's really heavy. I didn't, when you're in the middle of hosting a
Yeah.
conversation, you don't necessarily realize it. So, yeah.
There yeah, there have been times when I've been on the verge of tears talking to people because
Mhm.
it hurts me so much to know that people can be that cruel.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, like and maybe it's my naivete speaking or something, but I don't understand it why you can do that to people because, you know,
Yeah. It doesn't do
really,
any good.
it doesn't do you any good.
No.
It doesn't, elevate your life,
Right.
and hurting somebody to that level is just unfathomable to me.
Mhm.
I don't at all understand it, and
Same
so
here. Same
it
here.
hurts. It
And
hurts a lot.
one thing too I was going to say is that it's not going to fix everything, but giving them a platform, giving them a space to talk about what's gone on, and the things that have been done to them or things they've gone through on a podcast is something I feel it's got to make some kind of difference. It's got to at least help in some way, because maybe they felt voiceless up until that point, and if we can give a small light on that, and share it, I just feel like that's so much of, I think, why I got into this, and why you both did too, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
you're not alone.
Yeah,
So,
right.
I mean, when they're talking to one of us on the podcast, if anything, you're not alone because you've got us to host. We've
Hmm.
got you. You're not alone, and putting your voice out there and other people hearing it, or maybe even contacting you or friending you on social media, it really
Right.
pushes home that you're not alone and you're not the only one dealing with this.
Hmm. Hmm.
If that means that one less person attempts suicide, or one less person feels like they're the only person on earth, if it's just one, I've done
Hmm.
what I set out to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if they just feel better that day, like that's that's worth a lot.
Yeah, and
we
that's why I do it because, like, when I was teaching, I lived for the aha moments
Mm,
and, the triumphs that my students were, getting jobs and graduating, and that felt really good. And being able to then parlay that into the podcast and have them feel like, I've wanted to talk about that for so long and I never felt comfortable, and now I do. And somebody else listens to that and says, you know what, I went through that too,
true.
and I feel better, I understand better. That just I think is euphoric.
Hmm. It is. And I don't know about you, but for me, I was in that space, in academia and sort of had to leave and pivot and figure out what I wanted to do next. And that was one of the things for me that even though my degree and training wasn't necessarily, obviously it wasn't in podcasting, which maybe there should be a degree in that. I don't know.
There should be.
But no, it's just interesting that you can take elements and pieces of that old pathway that you were on and bring
Mhm.
it to this space with social media and podcasting. And it's just been like,
yeah.
so great to be able to see that and have people and realize, oh wow, this is, making a difference. This is somehow helping in some way, however small it is.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
we say it all the time. We're not in it for money. I mean, if we get offered money, I'm not saying we'll turn it down,
Yeah.
but
Sure,
we
right.
want thousands of listeners so that we can make the difference, so that we can
Well,
spread
and
the word,
money would
share those
increase
stories.
reach.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
That's the only reason why we would take the money is to increase the reach. But
exactly.
I'm not in this to be the next Oprah Winfrey or
Mm,
Phil Donahue or anything like that. That's not why I'm here. I'm here so
Yeah,
that
I
you
can't.
can be the next
mhm.
Oprah or whatever you
That's
choose
well
to be.
said. Yeah.
So, I enjoy seeing the people that I interact with blooming, blossoming, and things like that.
Mhm.
It makes me feel good. It makes me enjoy it more than if I'm doing it, if that makes sense.
Right. No, it does.
Because it's like a feeling that lasts a lot longer than the accomplishments that I do myself.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's kind of easier to see the fruits of your labor when it's somebody else
I was
enjoying
gonna
it
say
than
that. Yeah,
doing it yourself.
that's how I feel with it. Yeah, well, that's really good. Wow, I feel like we could go in a whole bunch of different directions.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
I'm a
yeah,
talker, but
right. Well, but I sure appreciate it, and I think there's room probably to have another conversation in the future, maybe.
yes, I would love that.
Yeah, but I wanted to give you a chance to just say kind of where you want listeners, like where you point people to find,
Sure.
your podcast and everything, whether they're wanting to listen to it or maybe be a guest or something as well.
Sure. We are on all the major platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as they say, wherever you get your podcasts.
I've heard that
We
before.
have we have a website at otheringpodcast.com, and there's an interviews page on there. You can go there to sign up to be a guest, or you can hit us up on Instagram or TikTok, Othering Podcast. That's our
Mhm.
handle everywhere, or Facebook, any of them. We
Great.
reply to messages pretty quickly. I'm always on top of that.
Hmm.
So,
I'm not.
Well, I noticed it right away when we were first talking that the
mhm,
communication was very quick, which is good.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm on top of
I
that.
try, but it's just I'm just bad at that.
And
Well, it's you're
thank you very much for
Yes,
having
thank
us. Very
definitely
appreciate it.
sure appreciate it too. And anybody that wants to get like t-shirts and merchandise is that
Oh,
like
yes.
offered as well on
Definitely come
Yep.
on our website.
okay.
We've got mugs, we've got, totes, and we've got T-shirts right now.
Nice. Well, that's inspiring me to try to get some of that going for the TyePod too. So
That
Yes,
was
that
kind of
would be
stressful
awesome.
getting set up.
oh man, I
Yeah,
feel that. Yeah, yeah. But thanks again to you both, and
Thank you so
looking forward to
much.
sharing the conversation and maybe having some more in the future.
Yes,
definitely.
definitely.
Sounds
Great.
good. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Great.
Bye.